Good afternoon, colleagues. I call this meeting to order. Welcome to the 77th meeting of the Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs. We acknowledge we meet on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. Pursuant to standing orders, our meeting is in a hybrid fashion today, and we have both witnesses and members joining us online for the first hour. After the first hour, we're going to be going into close, so there's a new login link for our members who will be joining us for the second hour. For Mr. Augustine, you have on your screen the choice of language. There's going to be either floor, which is the language being used, English or French. And so if you want to select that now. For everybody else, there's interpretation on the headsets here if you need it. When speaking, and again, Mr. Augustine, this applies to you, you'll have to mute and unmute yourself. For anybody in the room, we'll look after that for you, so you don't have to worry about pushing any buttons for those who are here in the room with us. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you're not speaking yet, please make sure you mute yourself. And now that we're in session, there's no photos allowed or screenshots. Today with us, we have 3 representatives. So in the room with us, we have Adam Munnings, Legal Counsel, Semiahmoo First Nation from my home area. I live and work on the traditional territories of Semiahmoo, Katzie, Kwantlen, and Matswe First Nations. We have Chief Stephen Augustine, Mi'kmaq Grand Council, and also in the room, Graham Marshall, Member 2 Councillor, Member 2 First Nation. So welcome to the 3 of you. We're going to give you each 5 minutes for opening statements. I have a handy card system here. When I give the yellow card, there's 30 seconds left. When you get the red card, time's up, but don't stop mid-sentence. Just finish your thoughts, and then we'll move on. And so when you're ready, Chief Augustine, I'll start the clock. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Okay, my name is Stephen Augustine, and I'm a hereditary chief on the Mi'kmaq Grand Council. And the reason why they call me a hereditary chief, it's because I come from a long line of hereditary chiefs. My father's name was Patrick. His father was Thomas Theofield. Thomas's father was Thomas. Thomas's father was Noel, and Noel's father was Peter, and then Michael Augustine. Michael Augustine signed the Treaty of Peace and Friendship in Halifax on March 10, 1760. And this is the reason why my involvement in the Mi'kmaq Grand Council is I'm a descendant of the treaty signer. And before that time, the same person, Algwimu, is a long line of hereditary chiefs. Gwimu is the name for the loon. And so in the time of when Champlain arrived to Nova Scotia at Port Royal in the early 1600s, they baptized Grand Chief Member 2 on June 24, 1624. And his daughter married hereditary chief Algwimu. His name comes up. It is recorded by Champlain, Marc Lescarbot, Pierre Bayard, and a few others that were in Port Royal at the time. So that just gives you a context of the connection that I have with our land and our treaties and our peace and friendship. And so I wanted to give a perspective of land is the idea that our creation story, the Mi'kmaq creation story, explains that we were created on this land and that we peeled ourselves from the land as human beings. So we belong to the land, not the other way around. The land doesn't belong to us. And that we moved around quite freely, and every chief looked after their family. And they had fires, what we call mawiomis. And mawiomi is like the idea of coming together under one roof. And the chief's responsibility is to take care that everybody had food, medicine, clothing, shelter, tools of survival, the ability to travel around, and the ability to negotiate their survival from Mother Earth with the birds, plants, animals, and fish using ceremonies. And so this is our connection to the land. It is very sacred. And we belong to the land, And so there is a different kind of ideology around the notion of land in the mainstream context, because when you talk about land, you're talking about boundaries. You own a lot of land or acres of land, and it belongs to an individual, and it's registered at the local registry office. And so it has boundaries. And similarly, the laws of the land have boundaries as well. Our own job descriptions for the jobs that we hold, they're bound by the job description. We cannot go beyond or away from that. So, in essence, when Europeans arrived, the early French arrived, we allowed them to come and settle on the land as our brothers and sisters, our fellow brothers and sisters. And there was a lot of them, almost 100 French people intermarried with Mi'kmaq women for the first 30 years of the 1600s. And so there was a lot of interrelationships. That was our way of making peace with the new arrivals. And so there was no question of us giving up our land. Marc Lescarbot wrote back to Henry IV, Henri IV, King of France, and told him that the indigenous people here have no notion of private property or real estate. And we're not going to tell them that by planting our flag that we claim sovereignty over their territory. And so the fallacy continues, and when the British arrived and declared war on the French and defeated the French, they assumed that they took control of the sovereignty that belonged to the French, which was at the time determined to be called Acadia or l'Acadie. And in Mi'kmaq, Egadi is the term we refer to as the land. And Egadigewa, les Acadiens, they're actually people living in the land because they made their houses out of mud and straws and wood. And so our terminology for Acadian people was Egadigewa. And they were related to us because they intermarried with our women from about 1605 until 1632, when the Razili arrived with the French women and children. And so in that instance, we have been attached to the land spiritually and physically. And in terms of restitution for lands, I would, in a modern context, I would look at obtaining lands that are unoccupied, that are owned by the crowns, federal and provincial, and lands that are nobody's living on and nobody's paying taxes on it. Those are the kind of lands, because we have to be able to obtain our livelihood from the land. We have to be able to access fish, animals, birds, and plants, because those are the necessary elements that we relied on for our food and our medicine, our clothing and our shelter and our tools of survival, how we traveled around. Everything that came from those elements was our identity. That was our connection to the land. And that kind of describes us culturally and distinctively because of what we wear. The animals that we wear, the feathers that we decorate, our clothing, our headdresses, and the shells and beads that we use, it all comes from the land. Everything comes from the land.
Chief Augustine, I'm going to have to jump in here. We're up to the 5 minutes now, but thank you so much for the opening statements. I want to save time to have a discussion with the members as well. So if there's a quick concluding sentence, I'll get you to do that. Otherwise, we'll move to our next witness for our opening statement.
All that to say, we have a very sacred relationship to the land, and it hasn't been given up by us in the treaties of peace and friendship that were signed in the Eastern Canada, pre-Confederation in the 1700s.
Okay, thank you so much for that, and look forward to the conversation with you. I think we'll go next to Mr. Marshall, if you're ready to go, and the floor is yours for 5 minutes whenever you're ready to start.
Walalio, Nindalo is C. Gray Marshall, NUSP Member 2, Chief and Council. I want to thank each and every one of you for inviting me here today. My name is Graham Marshall. I'm part of Membertou Chief and Council. Membertou Mi'kmaq Nation is one of the top Indigenous communities in the country of Canada. And why we are like that? Because of what we have done. Our work ethic that our ancestors have instilled in us has always imagined us to always remain at the top, to always fight and to always honor our ancestors. Coming from Membertou was located first on Sydney Harbour, which we call Gunduikduk. Gunduikduk means the place of the rocks, which was located in Sydney Harbour. During that time, we were forcibly removed in the early 1900s to the present-day Membertou, which is on top of a hill where it was all swamp land and really land that wasn't really fertile for growing anything. Now, because of coming from Membertou and because of the amazing work ethic that our grandparents and great-grandparents has instilled in us, we became one of the top Indigenous communities in the country of Canada. So when we talk about ATRs and when we talk about of how we got to do it, it's thoughts like this of why it's important, because when we became successful into this country of Canada, we tried to have and acquire that land back of our old territory of Gunduikduk, located in Sydney Harbour. Through that long process, it took a long process, so it ended up lost. So as Membertou, we initially just bought that land and gave that land back to our community. Right now, there's present-day commercial buildings that are located in Gunduikduk of who we are and represent and honor our ancestors of where we come from. So when we look at land back of so many different imagined things that happened in Mi'kmaq, when we look at this country and was created, this country was created in Confederation in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. Prince Edward Island is located in Mi'kmaq territory. So as Mi'kmaq territory, we are one of the Indigenous tribes that have the longest relationship with settlers, more than the Indigenous tribes throughout the country of Canada. With that being said, we know the pros and cons of working with relationships with settlers through so many that have come through here and understanding the people of the Don, understanding Mi'kmaq. So when we talk about land, as you heard from Sagamaw Augustine, of the importance of land to us as well. When you look at this country of Canada, so many amazing monuments, so many landmarks throughout this country. Canadians tend to forget that they are on Indigenous lands. They are on the lands of the Algonquin, the Anishinaabe, the Haida, the Mi'kmaq. So when we understand that, and Canada it realizes that this is all Indigenous territory. Nindale with Membertou. I am Mi'kmaq. I am from Membertou. So as an Indigenous people of having experience with settlers of our people, every Mi'kmaq today is really a walking miracle of the trials and tribulations of 1,000 years of common relationship with settlers. And every Mi'kmaq today is really a walking miracle of why we are here today. So when you hear about Sagamaw Augustine and the land and the importance of it to us, it's run with us. Every river, every rock, that the land is part of us. We come from the land. The creation story of who we are and where we come from of Mi'kmaq is so important and dear to us. The land is part of us. So as Membertou becoming the one top Indigenous communities of Canada, we understand that. And we understand that working nation to nation to understanding that every country realizes of the importance of who we are and where we come from. Indigenous peoples throughout this country is so important, and they are so dear to their territories. So when we change the narrative on understanding of who we are and what territory we come from, we have to go and change the narrative of that. When we come from Mi'kmaq territory, and I'm in the district of Unama'kik, which is Cape Breton Island, so important to understanding of who we are. So when we are forcibly removed and the disposition of so many Indigenous peoples throughout this country, that land is so important to us. Because land also is included, is our language, our culture, our way of life is important So me coming from a Mi'kmaq community that is located in a town, in this town we were forcibly removed, and there was only 2 times in this country's history that was accessible. And one of those was my community. We had to make that work. We had to adapt to that, to understanding of how we understand from the land. The land is so endeared to us, of who we are and where we come from. So when we are in a community that we don't have access to water, we are located in a swamp, it determines and gives our way of life of who we are is embedded into our DNA as Ilnu people. That way of life is taken from us. The land holds our language. The land holds our culture. So when we are in disposition of so many territories and communities, that life is taken from us. That's why land is so important for each and every one of us Indigenous people in Canada. As Mi'kmaq people coming from the people of the Dawn in this country of Canada, we are the ones that greet the sun first. We are the ones that understand of settlers, everyone that resides in this great country from Toronto to Vancouver, to the coast to coast to coast, of us greeting in the sun first, of having the longest relationship. And we are still here. And we are still understanding of who we are. Indigenous peoples, we are created that it's our duty to protect Mother Earth. It is our duty to protect every single person in our territory. So when we have rights that are taken away with water and land, that is why it's so dear to Indigenous people, because as an Indigenous people, it is our duty to protect Mother Earth. So when we are connected to Mother Earth.
We're at the end of the 5 minutes, so if you can conclude with your whatever closing statement you'd like to give, and then we'll move to our next guest, and then we can get into the questions. Sorry to interrupt you, but yeah.
No, thank you. I was waiting for your red card and yellow card.
Well, I was waiting for you to finish, but it's a very interesting and very useful statement. But yeah, if you want to just conclude, and then we'll carry on.
But as Canadians, I want to thank each and every one of you for giving me this opportunity of how we have changed the narrative of when we look at truth and reconciliation. When we look at truth and reconciliation, we have to understand the truth first. Merci beaucoup. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And now we'll go to Mr. Munnings with the Semiahmoo First Nations. Mr. Munnings, over to you for 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Adam Munnings. I'm an Anishinaabe from Curve Lake First Nation and legal counsel for Semiahmoo First Nation. I think I sent around 2 maps, one of their traditional territory and one of the reserve where Canada placed them. Semiahmoo First Nation is on the west coast, the furthest west coast of the mainland, on the border. They were displaced with the border, so the signing of the Oregon Treaty. They were displaced from their other village sites. So if you're not familiar with the border in that area, Point Roberts is in the U.S. side. They had a village site there. They had fishing sites in the United States waters now. They can't access those. They can't access their village site. They had village sites at near Tawasin, where there's now Tawasin Treaty. They weren't fully consulted on that treaty, and so some of their rights are being infringed by that treaty. Semiahmoo's also lost village sites to the south, near the city of Blaine. Semiahmoo Resort is on one of their village sites down in the States. They've lost that through that Oregon Treaty. They also have a couple village sites at Crescent Beach, as well as their current reserve. So they've lost a lot of those lands that are important to them, similar to the other nations. In addition to land and the importance of land that the other 2 speakers have spoke about, is the ocean. So for Semiahmoo, there's a huge foreshore there that they're no longer able to access for cultural purposes, such as getting cultural foods, shellfish, and other fisheries in that area. It's been closed by DFO arbitrarily, and it hasn't been doing any studies to look at how that is. But they look at the ocean, they're fishing on the ocean, there's shell fisheries on the foreshore as land as well, and it has significant importance to them. Right now, there's no real resolution in how they can get that land back. When we're looking at the foreshore, we're looking at the ocean. Semiahmoo is working through addition to reserve specific claims to get back land. If you look at the map of their reserve lands, you can see that it's almost wholly encompassed by takings of the federal government, takings for railways, takings for highways, takings for Canadian Border Services, takings for park, and takings for like sawmills and stuff historically. Semiahmoo's never received revenue sharing from this, never received any economic compensation for that other than minimal payments. So they're working through specific claims on those to get some of those backs or get compensation for those lands. When you look at the larger territory map, you can barely notice where Semiahmoo Reserve is. It's small in a little corner at the edge of the thing. Their territory is quite huge. They don't really have a footprint in there. The main area where they live is Surrey and Langley areas. In those areas, the nation's trying to do some addition to reserve to get some economic development happening because their reserve's quite limited. It's originally 390 acres. I think now the usable space is around 180, 150 acres that they can do for development and for their members living there. So they need something else. They need lands to come back. They need to look at that. Some of the problems that we have with the addition to reserve and specific claims is staffing. There's not adequate staffing at Indigenous Services Canada. There's not adequate staffing at the Department of Justice to address these issues, to do things in a timely manner. The nation's frequently lost opportunities because of delays in processes at Indigenous Services Canada with DOJ on some of these things. And over the last 6 years, the nation's been coming to Ottawa to lobby the government to try and help change these things for themselves and other First Nations, and had some good results on that. But again, for them, economic development is needed in order to do housing, to build on reserve, to bring members back, to protect the oceans, protect the rivers in their traditional territory, and bring back something. So right now they don't have any of their traditional food sources. They're not able to fish. They're not able to shellfish in their territory, and they're looking at ways to have economic reconciliation, have land back, so that they can help protect and bring back those resources. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. We're going to get right into our rounds of questions. So the first rounds of 4 questions are 6 minutes each. And I have up Mr. Viersen for the first one.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to thank the witnesses for being here today. I'm going to depart a little bit from questioning the witnesses. I put a motion on notice the other day around Bill C-69. I would note that the Supreme Court has deemed Bill C-69 to be unconstitutional. And this bill affected very many communities in northern Alberta. And I was wondering if we could just take a moment and pass my motion. The motion doesn't call for a study or anything like that. It just asks for this committee to state an opinion, and that opinion be reported back to the House of Commons. My motion just notes the Supreme Court's decision, and that Parliament should work quickly to ensure that we abide by that decision. I would note that at the time of the passage of C-69, Chief Isaac Labucan from Woodland Cree First Nation was quite upset about the passage of this bill, as it ended a number of pipeline projects that were anticipated in northern Alberta, Eagle Spirit Pipeline being one of them, Northern Gateway Pipeline being another one of them. And so at that time he was concerned about this, and it seems as if his concerns have been upheld by the Supreme Court of Canada. Mr. Chair, I would seek that we pass this motion. Thank you.
Okay, I have a speaking list, and Mr. Schmale is next on it.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for their great testimony. It won't take up too much time because I know we have some good questions for you, and I know you have some even better answers, so we look forward to that conversation. What I would like to just focus on. Yep.
Sorry, I was,
Sorry, Chair.
we have to deal with the motion.
Yep.
So you're speaking to?
The motion.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I thought you were. No,
I
I
was
was
just
like,
thanking them for their time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, it's like, okay, I think we're still on the motion, but I just wanted to clarify that.
I know I can be all over the place.
Carry on, please, Mr. Schmidt.
Okay, all right. I lost my train of thought. C69, yes. In terms of my colleague's motion, I think this is something that the committee should very seriously consider. And of course, as you know, I'm voting in favor of that. We've had a number of Indigenous leaders at this committee itself talk about the damage that C69 was going to do prior to its implementation. And we've seen that almost immediately the amount of investment that left Canada following the introduction of C69, among others, including the anti-tanker bill that came after that as well, and the warnings that we got from Indigenous leaders before, during debate, and afterwards. And we've seen that oil and gas investment has taken a severe hit. In turn, also hurting First Nations communities themselves. And I point to this article written by Stephen Buffalo, who was just at our committee last week. June 14th, 2009 is the date. 2019, sorry. I think it's 2009. Just talking about the damage it is going to do to prosperity on First Nations communities that will or would have benefited from resource projects like oil and gas, like mining, and the list goes on. And just talking about how this was a way, if we were able to capitalize on the investment coming into the country for natural resource projects, turning it into jobs, turning it into investments, turning it into revenue generations, wealth and opportunity on and off reserve, it will be a benefit for everybody, Indigenous people, non-Indigenous people. This could be a win-win, while at the same time also supplying the world with energy, some of the cleanest energy taken out of the ground, if you will, and displace the bad actors in the world. And we've seen the German Chancellor come to Canada. We've seen the Japanese Prime Minister asking for Canadian energy. The Prime Minister told them there wasn't a business case for it. I don't know what industry people he spoke with, but clearly not the same ones that are actually advocating for the growth of the industry. Then we've seen the disruption in the world. We've seen Germany sign on to Russia, which is basically financing the war against Ukraine, despite warnings against that. The conflict happened. We've seen pipelines disrupted. Therefore, supplies start to get disrupted. And of course, demand was ramping back up after the pandemic and other things. And therefore, we have a shortage of supply, not to mention some other countries cutting their production, whereas Canada could have played a leadership role had we been ongoing promoting this industry and promoting the extraction of this resource. There would be tremendous wealth to be learned and generated from some of these projects. And when we talk about the cost of gas, yes, we mentioned the carbon tax as a major point, but also another way to bring down the price, which would bring down the price of almost everything as well, including food, things Canadians are having a tough time affording, food and fuel. You add supply. The laws of supply demand are almost absolute. And by adding supply to a stretched system already, doing it the best way we can, providing jobs, wealth, and opportunity in all communities, we could have had a win-win situation here, and at the same time, really helping our residents, our citizens, the people of this country who would like to have lower prices at the supermarket, who would love to have lower energy prices, even filling up their car and filling up their tanks in their trucks that they use to transport the goods. It all is combined. And when you have an industry that is basically handcuffed, it's basically shut down because of bad government policy, and no way to increase that when the world is itching for it, you have an increase in price. And I just find it very frustrating that these Indigenous leaders, and I'm going to quote Stephen Buffalo very shortly, and I will wrap up my comments because, again, we do have witnesses that we want to ask some questions of. Though the warnings were there, all the warnings that this is going to cause problems, all the warnings were there in terms of the investment that was going to leave the country, and we saw billions leave. Even when the government bought Trans Mountain, what did the company do that sold the government Trans Mountain? They took that money and invested in infrastructure in Texas. So Texans and the Americans get to use Canadian dollars, Canadian taxpayer dollars, to invest in their infrastructure and create jobs, opportunity, and wealth in their country while we lag behind. And I'll quickly quote Stephen Buffalo, and I'll wrap up because I do, again, want to get to the witnesses. I quote, "For some of our communities, oil and gas projects, pipelines, and related infrastructure, and a vast service sector have produced jobs, supported new Indigenous-owned companies, and produced large returns for Indigenous governments. We use the money to build houses, support cultural programs, and pay for our administrative options. The revenue also gave us more financial autonomy and created a real sense of optimism in some of our communities." So, again, Stephen Buffalo just appeared at the committee last week. He was advocating for this. There are lots more opportunities here if the government would reconsider some of its anti-energy policies, especially at a time when the world is asking for it to do so. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Schmiel. Next on my list, I have Ms. Udlit, and then Mr. Zimmer, and then Mr. Carr. Yeah. So just for our witnesses' sake, to let you know what's happening, we had a motion that was put on notice, and it's met the threshold, the time that's needed, and so it's a legitimate motion that has been brought forward, and so we need to dispense with that before we can get back to the rounds of questioning. So that's where we're at right now in the proceedings. So I need to go through my speakers list. So Ms. Udlut, we'll go to you next.
Thank you, Chair. I think that it is absolutely shameful that we're even discussing this motion during this study. Not only have Indigenous people's lands been stolen, hence why we're talking about land back, now study time is being stolen by the Conservatives, filibustering, taking away time from witnesses who I'm sure are very busy themselves. I think that we should move to discussing going back to the study. Either just vote now and stop our conversations, because it is absolutely embarrassing that we're studying a motion mid-study. I'm sure that there should have been a process to make sure that we do discuss motions afterwards, not mid-study.
Ms. Udlut, I just want to clarify, I didn't hear you state it explicitly, but were you asking for a vote on the motion now? I just want to adjourn debate, which would then, or to just to clarify, or if I continue moving through my list, then Mr. Zimmer is next.
I do prefer to vote right now so that we can get back to the study. We are currently stealing time from our witnesses and from the study.
Okay, so with the motion to adjourn debate, then
point of order, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, where's that from?
Mr. Zimmer.
Point of order,
Oh,
Mr.
Mr. Zimmer. Okay.
Yeah, just to be clear, I didn't hear Ms. Udlut ask to adjourn the debate. I heard that from the clerk. I think to put words in Ms. Udlut's mouth, I had a question still to ask and still some points to make about what motion is on the table right now. So to presuppose that there was no longer any discussion necessary for this motion is incorrect.
Well, I would say that Ms. Udlut, in the clarification I asked for, did say that she was asking for a debate to be adjourned. And so I'm ready to call the question. That is a motion that requires to be dispensed with. If the debate is adjourned, it will be able to be brought forward again, and the debate can then carry on, and we'll keep the list with you next on the list. But for right now, the motion I have before me is the debate be adjourned, so I'm going to call all in favor.
Point of order, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
point of order, Mr. Pearson.
I think the motion to adjourn and the motion to call the question are two different motions. So I need to be clear on, are we calling the question, which I would be okay with? I would happily have a vote on this vote right now, which is what I heard from Lori, that she would like to have the vote right now. I would be okay with that, although it deprives Ben and Mr. Zimmer of their speaking opportunities. I would happily take a vote on this motion right now.
Okay, I'll go back for clarification to Ms. Idloot in her comments. Were you looking at debate being adjourned or calling the question on the motion?
I think that the debate should be adjourned, that we can later discuss the motion after the study is over.
Yeah, so then that will keep the list alive. So the vote is on to debate, adjourn debate now, and so all in favor of that. Okay, recorded division? Okay. So you call it.
Mr. Batiste? Yes.
In favor.
Mr. Carr?
In favor.
Ms. Gainey?
In favor.
Mr. McLeod? Monsieur Drouin? Mr. Schmale?
Against.
Mr. Vidal?
Against.
Mr. Viersen?
Against.
Mr. Zimmer?
Opposed.
Madame Birubi?
D'accord.
Ms. Idlout?
In favor.
Yeas 7, nays 4.
Okay, so the debate is adjourned for now, and it will be able to be brought forward. And I've noted that we have Mr. Zimmer and Mr. Carr next on the list when it does come back. I'll get our clerk to keep track of that. So next, we're going to go back to our questions. I have Mr. Batiste up for 6 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you for your patience on that, administrative duties. My question is for the Stephen Augustine.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Bob, what the hell?
Okay, Mr. Zimmer, what's your point of order?
Excuse me, Mr. Jaime or Jaime?
Sorry.
I had a point of order. That's
Yeah, I'm calling you Mr. Zimmer for your point of order.
yeah. Mr. Batiste made some comments. I'm just not sure I was clear what he actually said there, but
I was trying to.
it's my
conflict of
understanding
witnesses.
that Mr. Well, I think anyway, it's an interesting choice of words. I guess Mr. Bierson still had a question, and I wonder what happened to that question time.
Committee I've been with, when the clock starts, they take the floor. The clock runs. We've reached the end of the 6 minutes. And so then we move to the next round of questions, or the next questioner. If this committee deals with it differently.
This has never arisen in this committee when the motion is interrupted. Yeah.
Okay, I've generally had the clock run through, and then we move to the next person in the sequence of questioning. The reality is that we have an hour, so we have 20 minutes left here for questioning. We've spent 15 or 20 minutes on this piece. I have 18 minutes of questions where parties haven't yet had the floor.
Usually we're pretty sure he still gets his time, but
Well,
I guess everyone is finding out.
Our clerk has indicated that would be allowed, so I'm going to follow up. I don't take this as precedent for my future rulings, but we'll go through the 4 rounds then of questions at 6 minutes each, and we'll get clarification for the next time this comes up. And So, Mr. Vierson, by the time you moved the motion, there was about 10 seconds gone, so I'll give you just under 6 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for being here. Mr. Marshall, do you have any specific recommendations on how we can improve some of these land back operations? You said, I think it was addition to reserve was one of the mechanisms that your community was using. Is there any specific thing that you can say, hey, if this piece wasn't part of that, or we did this because back in the past we used fax machine. Today we don't use the fax machine anymore. Some of these like notices that have to go out and things like that, putting notices in the newspaper, for example, aren't necessarily the most effective way to get it out. Is there something like that we need to change to make it so that we can make some of these things work more quickly?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for that question. You know, the ATR process throughout the country of Canada has always been long and withstanding. The ATR process has took approximately 12 years for that parcel of land to acquire. So as the ATRs acquire 12 years of going on, you know, just in observance of the standing committee today and the colleagues throughout the table, throughout the point of order, this is the prime example of how systems and policies cannot follow through. If we have point of orders and everything is delayed, this is what happens with the ATR. In these great buildings in our capital city of the country of Canada, when we have points of orders and delays and so on and so forth, when we come down into Indigenous lands and communities, we feel that point of order. We feel that delay. So when we have delays like that of ATR processes that take 12 years, it's because of systems and policies that are exercised that I see with my very eyes today of these point of orders and these delays. When you look at the word community, you have to observe and remember there's another word in that word, and that word is unity. We all have to work together. We all have to co-succeed. If we are one of the greatest countries in the world, then we have to show the world on why is that. So when you look at land back and look at Indigenous peoples, when observing and talking about oil and gas, a lot of my brothers and sisters of coast to coast to coast do not have clean drinking water in this great country. There's Canadians today that don't have clean drinking water. So I find it really disrespectful of talking about oil and gas when we don't even have clean drinking water for my Indigenous brothers and sisters throughout this great country. Thank you for your question.
Just back to the ATR, you said it took 12 years. Was there anything specific that, like I've heard complaints about the fact that the individuals that your community ends up dealing with, I don't know if you were like intimately involved in the ATR or not, but they say the individuals that come from the government aren't empowered to make decisions. Has that been your experience?
Well, it's just different institutions and different policies that create these ATR policies when we look at it 12 years. So in order to own that own parcel of land that we've been dispossessed of, because of the ATR process took so long, we took matters into our own hands and acquired and bought that land back for our own community. So we just disregarded the ATR process and bought that land back.
Okay, so that land that you bought back is not part of reserve then?
It is now with the ATR process that we've acquired and now is part of the additions to reserve as part of Member 2 First Nation.
And how did you fund the purchase of that land back?
Well, it's through own source revenue as well as becoming one of the top Indigenous communities in Canada. When we acquire and look for a place, we weren't always like that. So we were always in a deficit as well. And we always heard the word can't. We can't do this as an Indigenous people, and we can't do that, and we can't do that. That's one word that's really not in our vocabulary. As coming from a proud people, we always find a way on how we can help our people and help our nations and help our land. And so becoming successful as that, we were able and blessed to create that opportunity out of our own place as well.
Thank you. My time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So we'll now go to Mr. Batiste, who will have his 6 minutes.
Thank you. My question is for Captain Augustine. Stephen, could you tell us a little bit? You talked that the Mi'kmaq treaties never ceded any land. There's a common misconception in Canada that all of the First Nations treaties signed land away. Can you tell us what was, if that's true, within the Mi'kmaq treaties, and also within 3 minutes, can you state for us how the Mi'kmaq were displaced from their land if they never ceded it?
You're on mute. We're going to have to get you on mute and start over.
The treaties of peace and friendship were more about peace and friendship, not about the land. So when we made agreements with the British, we hadn't really agreed to give up the land. The British only assumed that they defeated us and they defeated the French and took over the sovereignty of the land. It was only after 1867, with the creation of Canada, with the British North America Act and the federal statute laws and provincial statute laws, divided responsibilities for Indians. And so we became a federal responsibility, and the federal government took over colonizing the Indigenous peoples, taking control over our lands and putting us on Indian reserves. And still today, we had our own traditional governments that signed the treaties with the British. We call it the Mi'kmaq Grand Council. It's our traditional governance structure. Our own people recognize us since 1888, when the federal government instituted federal statute law, that this was the way we're supposed to elect our chiefs through a democratic system. I'm a hereditary chief, and I come from a long line of chiefs, and I even welcomed Queen Elizabeth when she visited Canada in Halifax as a hereditary chief, welcoming another hereditary leader. It was her family and my family that signed the treaty in 1760. And there was no land surrender back then. So it's just a given notion, which is really a false notion, that the federal government took over the responsibility for the Indians at Confederation.
Thank you, Mr. Augustine. I heard you and both Mr. Marshall talk about the importance of land. We've heard a lot of testimony on land back that talks about land differently than as property, more or less as an equal partner, or that we have a connection to it. I think you said that we belong to the land does not belong to us. Mr. Marshall, can you talk a little bit about what Nedugalimk, the Mi'kmaq concept of the responsibilities to that land, and what that means to the Mi'kmaq?
Yeah, Nedugalimk is a meaning of a balance of life, to understanding of taking what we need and therefore always making sure that we protect for the next generations to come. As Mi'kmaq people, when we signed one of the strongest treaties in the country of Canada of no surrender of land, but also through peace and friendship. So when we look at peace and friendship and the importance of land and the importance of who we are through Nedugalimk, is so important that we understand the balance of where we come from and where we are. So when we look at those treaties that were signed by our ancestors weren't acknowledging the Mi'kmaq in the years 1700s of those treaties. They were protecting and the legacy of leaving behind of the next generations to come. So when we look at Mi'kmaq today in 2023, this is what we ask fellow Mi'kmaq and non-Mi'kmaq today, is what legacy are we going to leave behind for this country, and what legacy are we going to leave behind in the next 100 and 200 years? Is that there is no surrender of land that will continue to do so today. So we have to protect our ways of Nedugalimk and protecting our way of life throughout our territory of Mi'kma'ki.
Would you both agree that as part of land back, a big part of that and the focus of that is the protection of the land for future generations and not necessarily just about property?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll let Sagamau, as way of life protocol, Sagamau has to answer that first.
I would just say, I would add, I mean, in terms of Nedugalimkit, we use our indigenous ceremony to negotiate our survival on the land. And that's the reason why we don't take everything on the land and stockpile. So there is actually a spiritual, ceremonial balance in terms of our negotiating our survival on the land. And what was your question again, Jaime? Your Honor?
Was about stewardship of the land being an important part of land back. Would you agree with that?
Well, I guess in the modern context, we can use the ideology of stewardship, but it has its biblical context that man is above the land and animals, where in our culture we are equal to the plants and the birds and the fish. They are our relatives. So I think it's more a concept of trying to incorporate indigenous perspectives of land, especially our relationship and how we treat these elements that are part of our culture.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of our 6 minutes. We're going to go now to Madame Berube. Welcome, bienvenue aujourd'hui.
Welcome, Ms. Berube. You have 6 minutes. I'd like to thank the witnesses for coming here today. Thank you for coming to this committee. We would like to take advantage of your presence, Mr. Mannings, to elaborate further on Aboriginal rights. In our study on land restitution, can you define what you mean by Indigenous rights and how that ties into the land back or restitution of lands?
Are you asking me, Stephen?
Me, Mr. Munnings. Thank you for your question. I like when we look at Indigenous rights, we're looking at Indigenous laws and looking at the land from the perspective that Chief Augustine and Councillor Marshall are talking about. We're looking at it from a different lens. So that's the first place we have to start, is we're looking at it through an Indigenous lens. All living creatures are the same. We're cousins, we're related. Non-living is where the separation is. It's that way. That's the way the lens in some cultures work. Every culture across Canada is a little bit different in that relationship. And so we have to start from there. And then we have to start digging into Indigenous laws and Indigenous ways of knowing. And those are different across Canada for each nation. And so that takes some digging, but it's also hard to look at that because our culture was stolen from us as Indigenous people. Our culture's been taken away. I don't know my culture very much, so I'm Anishinaabe from Curve Lake. I had it all stolen. I don't speak my language. My mom can understand her language. I know some words. And so as we go across Canada, that's a common thread. So people are trying to bring back the language. The language is the main piece that tells us our Indigenous laws and where that comes from. So the work has to be done on bringing back language, bringing back our culture, bringing back our connection to the land that we don't have. So in Semiamu's case, in my client's case, they don't have that connection to their fishing, to their hunting, to any of their land, and they need to have that connection brought back. For Semiamu, that's different because they're an urban Aboriginal band. Their traditional territory is all developed. So we have to think about what does land back mean for them, and what they want to do with things is to help protect and bring back their fisheries, because that's important to their culture. And so that's kind of what we're talking about in Indigenous rights with regards to land back, is changing the way people think of it from a property perspective to we're connected to it and part of it. Thanks.
During our last meeting, the term bureaucracy cropped up. We talked about excessive federal bureaucracy. Communities suffered as a result of the delays from the federal government. In your opinion, what are the next steps that you would be recommending to the federal government in order to accelerate or speed up the process?
Thank you. To speed up the process, I think there needs to be a look at the steps. Like, there's no clear steps on ATR. We kind of get lost in the Canadian government staff or Department of Justice looking at their liabilities and what that is, rather than looking at getting the lands back to the nations as quickly as possible. We get tied up in environmental reviews. We get tied up in what municipalities say. From a First Nations land, municipalities a child of the provincial government. They shouldn't overtake, their opinion shouldn't overtake the nations getting their land back. So a lot of times in ATR process, for example, municipalities comment and provide comment, and they talk about municipal services, they talk about access to roads, they talk about all this loss of taxation revenue, but it's the nation's land. And so why are we delayed because of a municipality? Why are we delayed because liability of Canada? Why are we delayed because of all this bureaucracy and people that have to have a say on things when that's our land? So as an Indigenous person, I'm looking at it, and that's my land. Why is it taking you long to give it back to me, right? So that's some of the bureaucracy that comes up on that. And then we get tied up in politics, so people playing politics, for example, and bringing up other issues that don't necessarily reflect the Indigenous, that it's Indigenous land. They want to talk about something else, and then they start playing politics with local MPs and other things to raise other issues, when the issue for nations is getting that land back and reconnecting with that land.
Ma question va être au chef.
I have a question for Chief Augustin. I see that you were involved with the Museum of Civilization of Canada, and you wanted to advance Mi'kmaq experience, and you wanted to share your expertise with other organizations. Based on your experience as an educator, what needs to be done on ancestral lands? What should we learn about the Mi'kmaq territories that we haven't learned to date?
Chief Augustine, I'd say that we're at the end of the 6 minutes, so I'll give you a couple of sentences to respond, but then we'll need to move on to our final round of questions with Ms. Idlut.
I think there is a need to educate the public about the reality of Indigenous peoples in Canada, about the treaties and the colonization issue, and our own people need to be educated about their own history and their own cultures. We've been colonized so long that a lot of our cultures and our peoples have lost their connection to the land and the traditional ceremonies and the languages. We need to get back all of that stuff. And I think there needs to be a governance structure that can be shared with the federal, provincial governments and the Assembly of First Nations, Métis National Council, and the Inuit. I mean, we all could probably work together and manage our own lands in different ways. And I think it would work positively for everybody all the way around.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Idlut, you have 6 minutes now for our final round of questions for this panel.
Thank you, Chair. Just in this session alone, we were exposed to two very different timelines. We started out our session in such a wonderful testimony provided by Chief Stephen, Hereditary Chief Augustine, which I very much appreciate, as well as Graham Marshall. And then we had on the other extreme realities that Indigenous peoples continually face, which are the use of administrative tactics to steal our time. So to me, this is not just about land back. This is about respecting our cultures. It's about reconciliation, My question is to Hereditary Chief Augustine and to Graham Marshall. If you could each share with us how we could reconcile using Indigenous laws, what land back could mean from Indigenous people's perspective. I'm not asking about colonial laws. I'm not asking about colonial policies. I'm asking you to share from your Indigenous perspectives what land back and reconciliation and using your Indigenous laws, how can we make sure that we learn from it so that we use it so that when it comes to making our report, that we're able to act on land back that is meaningful to Indigenous peoples. I'll ask Hereditary Chief Augustine to answer first, and then if Graham could be given time as well.
Well, Ali, thank you. I've been teaching for the last 30 years at universities, and I've been using the methodology. It's called the talking circle. And I think that talking circle, it started with a sacred ceremony, spiritual ceremony, and an eagle feather or talking stick is passed around. People speak one at a time, and that process can take us into a lot of areas of focused on law, of focused on traditional laws, Indigenous philosophies, education, about environment and climate change. All of these things, we were able to talk about them in one at a time. And with the Donald Marshall Institute, we've been focusing on those issues in our First Nations communities. And people have been sharing those concepts one at a time, listening while the others are speaking, and coming up with a final resolution, mostly agreeable to everybody. And it's built on consensus. And some people may not agree, but they'll nod their head and walk away and say, well, it's okay with me the way it is. And so I think it's a meaningful way to get opinions from other people without talking at each other and screaming at one another in an assembly.
And Mr. Marshall, if you'd like to jump in.
Thank you for the question as well. When we talk about land back and the acknowledgement, I think as Canadians we have to look at the disposition as well of the land throughout this great country, and understanding that truth and how we have to walk and understand the truth together. We are all here because of the passion of our country. So I think it's ways on how we can look at, on how we can co-succeed with one another, on how we can create those relationships again, and how we can start off on a better foot and a better understanding of through all this stolen land in Canada. It is stolen. So we have to understand and how to agree on how to co-succeed, on how to live with one amongst each other. I think that's the important people as Indigenous people and as Mi'kmaq people. We have to understand and we have to look at that truth first. We can look at the problems, yes, but I think we have to understand and look at the solutions on how we can co-succeed with one another, on how we can work and be together and agree on amazing things, on how we look at this hard topic. It's a hard topic. So when we look at a hard topic, we have to look at solutions on how we can co-succeed with one another. I think that is the best place, and we started off in a good way. I think that's the foremost step on how we can look at this.
If there's time remaining.
Yeah, there's 30 seconds left, Lori.
Adam, would you like to answer that question?
My mic's on. Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. I think just kind of quickly, I think land back is a great way to start on looking at Indigenous laws and looking at how there's no word that I can use to describe, but like stewardship is the closest thing I can think of. when we look at land back and looking through our Indigenous knowledge and our Indigenous laws around that, we're probably the best people to be taking care of the lands and to be protecting those lands and respecting the fish and the shellfish and the environment. And that would be a place to begin with applying Indigenous laws to land back on things. For Semiahmoo, one of their things would be taking back Boundary Bay and putting Semiahmoo into jurisdiction over that so that they could apply their Indigenous laws in bringing back the fishery, bringing back the shell fishery, and also the protection of other waterways and stuff. In the U.S., where waters cross along reserves, everybody upstream of that reserve on non-Indigenous lands has to meet or exceed the water quality requirements on the reserve. There's nothing like that in Canada. So, if we were to apply Indigenous laws to things like that and to other areas of land, I think, we'd be a lot better off. And that's where I see a start.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of our time on that one. I would like to thank all three of our guests today, Hereditary Chief Augustine, Mr. Marshall, and Mr. Munnings for being here. And I apologize for the delay, but we have our procedures we have to follow, and we got through it. And but I do appreciate your patience as we did that. I also just wanted to quickly raise to our committee members, in case anybody else has heard this, on Tuesday we had an unfortunate situation where we had two members of the public who came to hear our panel.
They're in the gallery right now.
Oh, okay. So I'd like to offer a public apology. We had two members that came, were interested in hearing what was happening. Security, for some reason, had a note that we were in camera and they were turned away. And so that's unacceptable. I don't know how it happened, but I'm working with the clerk and with security and the sergeant at arms to make sure that accurate information is conveyed to visitors who want to be here and listen in on the very important conversations that we have. So, gentlemen, I do apologize on behalf of the House and our committee. And thank you for joining us today. And with that, colleagues, we're now going to suspend briefly while we go in camera to talk about some committee business. So we're now suspended.